This is the Pal Talk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV, and syndicated by our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio to a bunch of people. 12 million households. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. The place to go, by the way, is paltalknewsnetwork.com. To see stories that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media. You know, it seems lately that the shenanigans on Capitol Hill have been taking center stage. You know, I thought that when my children grew up, given that I'm not an elementary school teacher, that I wouldn't have to be observing this kind of activity by people. The other day we saw a gentleman who calls himself a congressman grab some young students who were trying to interview him on the streets of Washington, D.C. And this lack of civility that we have been seeing is just becoming pervasive in our society, and it's really very unfortunate. You know, the President of the United States has been accused of failing to live up to the expectations as the Messiah and not walking on water and not standing over that oil well and not looking down with his X-ray eyes and fusing that whole together like we expect him to do as a president. He really got blasted for not being a cross between a Messiah and a Superman. And then he finally took the gloves off and he said some strong things about British Petroleum, and a lot of people took offense to that. He went from being theoretical to becoming a bit of a verbal street brawler, and then he was getting criticized for doing that. So then he meets with the British Petroleum officials, and at the end of the meeting they come out and they say, well, we've decided not to spend our money on dividends, and we're going to put together a $20 billion escrow fund to make sure that we have enough money to pay for the cap, to pay for the cleanup, to pay for the compensation of the people whose lives have been disrupted by what we have visited upon the Gulf of Mexico. And there were those who said $20 billion isn't enough. This is a sellout. But that there were others that said, oh, the president is twisting the arms of British Petroleum. Today, Tony Hayward, the CEO of BP, is up on Capitol Hill. We've been carrying that live all day here on the Pal Talk News Network. And almost to a man and a woman, members of Congress have been kind of slapping him around verbally. Of course, they know they're being recorded by C-SPAN. They want to look good to their constituents back home, I'm sure. With the notable exception of Congressman Joe Barton, a Republican of Texas, who actually apologized to Tony Hayward for the way the White House has been treating his beleaguered company. Boaz, could you roll the first video?
I'm ashamed of what happened in the White House yesterday. I think it is a tragedy of the first proportion that a private corporation can be subjected to what I would characterize as a shakedown. In this case, a $20 billion shakedown, with the Attorney General of the United States, who is legitimately conducting a criminal investigation and has every right to do so to protect the interests of the American people, participating in what amounts to a $20 billion slush fund that's unprecedented in our nation's history, that's got no legal standing, and which sets, I think, a terrible precedent for the future.
I want to begin by disagreeing in the strongest possible terms with what Mr. Barton said in his opening statement. Not only is the compensation fund that was created yesterday at the White House in a agreement reached between BP and President Obama not a slush fund and not a shakedown. Rather, it was the government of the United States working to protect the most vulnerable citizens that we have in our country right now, the residents of the Gulf.
Well, I don't know what shakedown means in Texas, but for where I come from, it's when organized crime or gangs force people to pay money. And at first blush, you would say, why would a congressman from Texas be protecting BP? I mean, isn't the Texas shoreline threatened by this leak? I'll tell you, somebody ought to take a look at the campaign contributions that Congressman Joe Barton has received over the years and see how much of that money has come from British Petroleum. That might explain his defense of Tony Hayward today. Well, there was one person in the audience today that clearly doesn't share Representative Joe Barton's views on these things. Her name is Diane Wilson. She's a fourth-generation shrimper. And the moment Tony Hayward opened his mouth to make his opening statement, he was preempted by Diane Wilson in the audience. Could you play the second video now, please, Boaz? Thank you.
Chairman Stupak, Ranking Members Barton.
Is this Ben, please, sir?